Am Setsuna is a love letter to Chrono Trigger, but that's about all it is. To say that I'm a Chrono Trigger fan would be an enormous understatement. It's a game that shaped my childhood, and it's not a stretch to say that it changed my life. Am Setsuna does a handful of things well, but it lives in Chrono Trigger's shadow far too proudly, and it's not even remotely worth the $40 price tag. As an RPG on its own merit, I have the following positive things to say about it. The soundtrack is absolutely wonderful, and it carries a lot of different emotions with it. Sometimes it's totally gorgeous, at other times it's mournful and tragic, and occasionally it's funny, like when the game repeatedly uses the same tense song in its entire score. Some of the snow visuals look gorgeous, although it feels like something I'd expect from an indie game rather than a big-budget studio like Square Enix. The serene white landscape really meshes well with the sentimental soundtrack. The combat is a step above the battle system from Chrono Trigger, in which the player builds up these little power node things and then presses the action button right as they use a move, in order to use a stronger version of that move. For example, a straight line attack can also heal HP, and healing magic can remove debuffs or cast auto-revive on the entire party. It's a very distinct battle system in a sea of copycats. Here are some things I didn't like about it. The game wasn't interesting or emotional at all. For something that's supposed to be an homage to one of the saddest games I've ever played on the Super Nintendo, I didn't even get remotely teary-eyed. The characters are hollow, and a lot of them got some cool setups that get completely abandoned later. On top of that, the characters are more or less palette swaps of the original cast. Ender is clearly Chrono, and the game even gives you the option to turn off his voice to give him the silent protagonist feeling. But they never build on him. He gets a cool outfit, and clearly he's some kind of vagabond with an interesting assassin backstory, but the game never explores it. From the moment you start the game and meet Setsuna, you're told by an ominous voice that you need to kill her. You're never given a reason as to why, not even in the game's ending. It's a plot obviously reminiscent to Final Fantasy X, in which Yuna has to travel on her pilgrimage to summon the final Aeon. But unlike in Am Setsuna, the characters in Final Fantasy X get plenty of time to hang out, get to know each other, and otherwise develop as characters. The player likely knows that Setsuna will die by the end of the game, and she was clearly intended to be a kind, heartfelt character, but the whole game she felt like a slightly boring Mary Sue. Nadir, however, had the most development in his backstory than anyone in the game. Okay, maybe Kier is a close second. Sue me. The game gives you dialogue options. These would be cool if they did something, but they mostly just exist to see if you're paying attention. If you answer correctly, the game proceeds as usual, and if you answer incorrectly, the other characters will stop to either laugh at you or chastise you for not paying attention. One has to ask then why dialogue options were even added. They aren't branching, they don't teach you any new information, and in one section they penalize you for answering incorrectly by warping you back to the entrance and making you fight the respawning enemies. Why is this here? It doesn't feel like I'm getting to know these characters anymore, and it doesn't give me any agency over the game's events. It reminds me that I'm playing an RPG on rails. Compare this game's single ending to Chrono Trigger's 12 endings, and the differences in choice become immediately clear. Another small gripe is the way the player makes money. In battle, enemies never drop money, they only drop spoils, which you can use to make food that boosts your stats, as well as to make Sprite Night, which lets you perform new attacks and magic spells. You have to go to this cloaked figure in each town and sell him those spoils. This isn't a huge deal, but considering you need money to buy potions, antidotes, tents, as well as weapons and weapon upgrades, this means the player is required to wade through an ever-growing list of spoils and decide how much they want to keep or sell. It's really tedious. Oh, and also, you see cool little sparkling spots on the overworld and in dungeons and stuff, but literally 100% of the time, they're just meal ingredients that you give to a chef to make you food that lasts one battle. Oh. The whole time I was playing, I was thinking to myself, okay, here's the epic, here's the cool treasure chest with stuff in them, here are combos, there's Magus, but where's the time travel stuff? The game tries to do some timey stuff at the very end of the game, but it's pretty inconsequential, and then it just ends. I was not happy. And lastly, I don't really think they needed to make the game 3D. Chrono Trigger was an absolutely gorgeous game for its time, all achieved with 2D pixels. If they took a 2D approach, they could have made their game look like this, or hell, even this. Whenever Square Enix makes a 3D old-school RPG, I'm not sure what it is, but they always fuck up something. Like, sure, it might have cost a little more money and taken longer to have an art team create frame-by-frame animation than it would wiggling around some limbs in a 3D animation program, but at the end of the day, it'll stand the test of time, and the characters won't have fucking hooves. Oh, also, the whole snow aesthetic of the game is interesting, but after a while it gets incredibly stale. The only other environments are a few forests, maybe a cave here or there, but for the most part, it's pretty unimaginative. Overall, I don't begrudge Am Setsuna. I'm really happy to see Square Enix give classic RPGs more attention. I just think they missed a lot of the finer details of what made Chrono Trigger such an excellent game. I might come back to talk more in depth about both games in the future. But for now, this game's rating is...